Hey guys, welcome back to Thriving in Love podcast, the podcast that challenges the status quo so couples can thrive as their authentic selves. Today on the show, we have a very special guest, Natassia Miller. She is a Brazilian sexologist, founder of Wonderlust, a sexual wellness company based in New York City. She used to work in finance before changing careers, and her mission is to help you build the sex life and relationship you want through intimacy tools and courses. Natassia, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to chat today.
Thank you for having me.
Before we start and dive into everything that you do, let's start with how you started this career path and what sparked that interest for you.
Yeah, so I used to work in finance for 8 years, and I, never really felt fulfilled by it. And then with my Saturn return, I ended up really thinking about what was the kind of legacy that I wanted to leave behind, but also the purpose of, what I
For
wanted my
sure.
career to be around. And I wanted to become an entrepreneur. It had been so many years in the making of me listening to podcasts, specifically Guy Raz's How I Built This. And it was just an inspiration. So I was in Brazil at the time where I'm originally from, and I moved back to New York where I went to college and already had a network here and wanted to really tap into that to be an entrepreneur. I partnered with someone who went to college with me to start another wellness company. Unfortunately, we faced a lot of headwinds during COVID. So a year and a half later, I left and decided to go into sexual wellness, not with the objective of being a sexologist and being like the face of the company. It was really to build a company that would provide tools, intimate devices, lube, everything for people. And I have this passion for sexual wellness because I grew up with a mom who was always very open about it and just had this, I think, unique capability of being able to talk about it so openly and comfortably. And I realized that my friends didn't. And I was just always so curious about talking to my friends about their sex and relationship experiences. I think that it's just really curious. There are a lot of experiences that are unique, but we also go through so many things where we feel like we're in it alone. And it's actually a really common experience. So
It's also so
I
taboo. Like, how old were you when you were having these conversations with your mom?
it started when I was about 10, just sort of like my mom explaining to me what it was
That's
and having the
amazing.
birds and the bees conversation.
Yeah.
And then later on, when I was sexually active in high school with my ex-boyfriend, I she was just very open about like, using a condom and protecting myself. And so I think it was not a pleasure centered conversation. It was,
Right.
very much of a learn how to protect yourself. But that
That's
conversation,
amazing.
just having that line of communication was
Right.
really, really helpful.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I hope, like, if there's moms listening right now, I hope they feel comfortable having these conversations earlier with their daughters and sons and feel like I think that the sooner we have these conversations, the better, especially in this day and age. I know, like they're like getting younger and younger as they're starting to get curious about all these
Um,
things. So
well, they're
I,
exposed to so much through social
right,
media, right? And the internet.
right.
So, that's tough.
Yeah, for sure. I think I read an article the other day that like girls are getting their periods sooner. So it's like not even something that's just like in our world externally, but it's like changing our DNA or
Yeah.
whatever it is inside, which is so
Yeah.
wild and interesting. When did you start to realize that like pleasure was something that needs to be taught or needs to be talked about more in the world?
So when I was building the other wellness company, I came across Dr. Emily Nagoski's Come As You Are book. And
Mm,
that's really considered kind of the holy grail of female pleasure, but just pleasure in general, because she touches on how so many different studies and the fundamentals of just how humans experience pleasure. And it really transformed my understanding of it. And I realized just how little I knew. Like, there's one thing that is being open to having these conversations like I was before, and having an ease in communicating what I want with my partner. But then there's a whole other level that is when you actually start studying and understanding that like what I know was just like the small tip of the iceberg.
Mm.
And if I'm reading that book, I know that I'm in the minority. So there's just so much to teach,
Yeah.
and that's when I realized that like this is what education on this subject is what I'm most passionate about.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so insane that I've been married for 9 years and my whole like sex life with my husband has been about like him and like pleasuring like and I'm not doing this like consciously, right? This is just like
Right.
such programming that we have in us. Always wondering like, is that it? Like, is that like what sex is just supposed to be for the rest of our life? And I hit that
Yeah.
point of kind of feeling like I'm in a rut with my sex life. So, which is why I started like researching and diving into this world, how I found you and your content. And I'm just like, there has to be more. There has to be something that I'm missing when it comes to like our sex life.
Yeah. So a few points there. First, you feeling like it was more about your husband is very natural for a woman to feel because we have been conditioned to serve others, not just men, but in general, like women have
Right.
been conditioned through our upbringing to prioritize others' needs. And men are the opposite. Like they've been conditioned to prioritize their own. It's a form of them asserting their masculinity and being able to provide for the family and being strong, and we're supposed to be the nurturers. So that is like very present in bed as well. And we just have a really hard time communicating what we want. And then even when we do communicate what we want, it
Oh my
takes
gosh, it's
longer
so
for
awkward.
yeah, and we also have like it takes longer for us to orgasm in general and
Right.
also to become aroused. And so because it takes longer, we end up having this block where we're like, oh, I'm taking too long. I'm being a nuisance to my partner. It's just easier if we stop or I'm going to fake, and that's a disservice to everybody. So it's a very common theme and it's very much of how we were brought up.
I'm definitely relieved to hear that it's like normal because I'm like, because you get these thoughts, right? Where it's like, oh my gosh, does this mean that I don't like love him anymore? Like, what does this mean?
No.
And if we get too much in our head, it could really spiral and just make us doubt everything. And I'm so glad that like people like you are creating the content that you are to make people like me feel less alone that no, this is normal. It's part of the journey. So I would love for you to talk about why do you think that happens? Where like in the beginning of a relationship, you can say it's like the honeymoon stage where it's just so easy and it's so exciting. And it's like, I remember he would like touch me and I'm like, what? Like it was so easy.
Yeah.
And now, like, why do you think that changes? Like, I know the love gets deeper, but then, like, the physical of it changes. Do you
Yeah.
have any,
Well,
like, research on that? I'm just
it
curious.
in the beginning, we have that excitement. It's called limerence, where because it's all novelty, when somebody touches you, when you are physically connected with them, it just kind of strikes up so much excitement in your body because it's new. And then
Mm,
over time, it's natural for you to pass that honeymoon phase. And the reason why we're not able to keep like it's natural for things to just calm down, and that's
right.
good because studies have shown that when we're like in that honeymoon phase, that can consume us to the point where it can be really unhealthy. It almost like stalls our ability to focus and be
Or even go
productive.
deeper, right? Into more, like, I know for me, like, we've been really working on, like, an emotional connection over, like,
Right.
this phase. So I do see some of my friends that, like, don't have the conversations that my husband and I are having and they are having, like, great sex. So I just think that maybe that's what it is. Like, it's just, like, layers of intimacy that are in, like, phases and stages. I don't know.
Well, that too, but like once it stabilizes, the problem is that we end up prioritizing so many other aspects of our lives, and things naturally can get
Mm,
really hectic, especially for people who have kids. But we need to learn how to prioritize quality one on one time and cultivate non sexual intimacy, because the non sexual intimacy really helps to boost the sexual intimacy. So
right.
if you're prioritizing, let's say, date night once a week, I think once a week is just like a really healthy goal for you to
Yeah.
have. And it doesn't need to be, you don't need to leave the house, but it really is a time where you put your phone aside. And that's just crucial because we tend to stay so much on our phones and don't realize the disconnect that it causes between us and our partners.
Yeah.
So it's setting the phones aside, and it's really taking the time to talk about each other and what you're going through and being curious. I think we forget to be curious, and we assume that we know everything, or even asking how your day went and the person just kind of brushing that off. Like, it's like not much. My partner's probably not going to be that interesting, but it's something that my partner and I cultivate a lot, where we ask that every day and we sit down and we have like a 15-minute conversation on how our day went, right? And I think that small amount of time just helps us connect so much.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really important for you to find a time, on a consistent basis, for you to really connect with your partner, and also cultivate touch. So touch is something that, especially in
Yeah.
America, because I'm Brazilian, and lived in Europe, and I've seen, such a difference. Like, we can be very cold and with each other, and we end up only touching when we want to initiate sex. And then the
Mm.
partner who is being touched and is generally the low desire partner grows resentful of the fact that they're only being touched when the other partner wants to initiate sex. So studies have also shown that when you take the time to touch each other on a daily basis, that also helps to cultivate that physical intimacy. And it's really important. The Gottman Institute has a list of like 13 things that straight couples who have great sex do. It was just their study was on straight couples. So
Yeah.
it's important to preface this. And one of the points is to cuddle 20 minutes a day. Now, you may not have 20 minutes a day, or you may not necessarily love cuddling, but it's finding a way where you're holding each other's hands, or, you have your arms around each other.
Yeah, sitting
But
closer together on the couch while
yeah,
you're watching TV. Like, it's so
exactly.
simple. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that you talk about that because like one of my favorite things about our marriage is that we're always touching in some way, shape, or form, which is why I
So
just
am
feel
I.
so like,
Yeah.
yeah. I think yesterday we were just like having like a little bit of a stressful day, and then we like hugged it later in the day, and he's like, "Is this the first time we touched today?" Like, we notice when we're not, you know? Um
Yes.
and I love something that you say in your previous interviews is foreplay starts the moment you like end sex, right? So it's like everything that's
Yes.
happening leading up between these sexual experiences. So like, I'd love for you to touch more on that.
Yeah, we forget that really what you need to cultivate that eroticism on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And it's how you treat your partner daily that makes the impact on when you're going to have sex next and how connected that sex is going to be. And I think
Mm.
I was in another interview where the interviewer was telling me, like, oh, so basically what you're telling me is in order to have good sex, it's basically like be a good partner. And I'm like, yeah, I think we lose sight of that. We get caught up on the techniques and the
The
accessories.
tools. Yeah.
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 But really, at the bottom of it, it really is being very aware of the type of partner that you're being, and how much attention you're giving to your partner, and
Mm.
it's a two-way street, right? So I think that's really important, to make a concerted effort and really connecting with them. So Esther Perel talks a lot about this, and the eroticism, again, it has nothing to do with, being sexual. It is about finding these pockets of pleasure to connect on a day-to-day basis, and that pleasure is about the happiness, right? So whether it is, the 5 minutes in the morning that you're having coffee together, taking an extra minute to kiss, and when you come home from work, maybe you're listening to music together as you're cooking dinner, finding what work, every couple's different, finding what works for you, but making sure that you're cultivating these moments of happiness.
I love that. And I think that's what really goes back to the conversation we were having earlier about why does marriage end up feeling like a roommate situation? why does it feel like we're in a rut? Like that romance kind of like goes out the window the more complacent we get, the more comfortable we get.
Yeah.
I know that's what happened with me. Like we hit like our 6.5 years, like that 7-year itch of like, whoa, I feel like I'm with a roommate. Like it doesn't feel romantic anymore.
Right.
We actually reignited it when we lived in our own apartments. I don't know if you know, but like when we were in New York, to reignite our relationship, we were like, how cool and fun would it be if we got our own apartments? Because we never like had that experience. I always lived with my parents while we were dating, and then we got married and we lived together. We didn't live together before getting married. I didn't live on my own. And that was fun. Like that was really, really cool. And that like reignite, and like every weekend, like you said, like we put our phones away. We had a lot more intentional time together. And now we practice those things now that we live together again, where it's like making sure we don't fall into that same roommate situation.
Yeah. Again, it's just being very aware of what you're doing and how that's impacting each other on a day-to-day basis is so important. Actually, Diane von Furstenberg did an interview. It's been like 15 years, but she mentioned how her current marriage is the best one so far because they live in separate homes.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, and that helps. But obviously there's also a lot of privilege in that, right? Like being able to have two homes. And so I know that's not the reality for most people. But
yeah, I mean, I do coach couples now with the things I learned from that experience. And I always say you don't have to live in your own apartment in order to have that. But yeah, I think it really did teach us some really valuable ways to connect that we bring into our relationship now, for sure.
yeah.
I think Gwyneth Paltrow also was like living apart together. And then when they moved back in, she was like, well, our sex life is dead, or sex drive is over, or something like that.
Yeah. But again, like it really is making sure that you're putting in this concerted effort. And I think one thing that's, for example, helped us a lot is through organizing surprise dates like twice a month. So one day I'm the one that's supposed to organize these dates, and the other day he is. And, you know, we set it on the agenda, and that already, at least like you're able to program like what, you know, when it's going to happen. But I think that's it's worked so well for us. And it's such a great way for you to bring in that element of surprise that you had in the beginning of the relationship throughout your life. Right.
I love that. Yeah. I think like spontaneity is like the biggest thing that can really keep like pleasure alive, or like that desire, right? I think Esther Perel's book, like Mating in Captivity, is so good on touching on this subject of like,
yeah,
just don't make things routine and try to keep things like exciting and different.
Yeah, which I think is easier said than done. But I think it needs to be somewhat organized where you have like, okay, I'm going to have a specific day of the week where we're going to connect, and we're going to, you know, prioritize our intimacy. We're going to have this date, and finding small ways to surprise each other throughout. So whether it is sending that text message and being like, hey, you know, I really enjoyed our night last night. I can't wait to see you later. Like, sure, you live together and you've been together for 10 years, but like, that's such a nice message for you to receive that we take for granted. And another thing that I've noticed is couples forget to tell each other that they look good. You know, and you kind of also take that for granted. And it's like, tell your partner that they look good when they look good, you know? It is about making your partner feel desired. So, you know, we want to feel desired, and we need to find a way to also make our partners feel desired. So it is finding these pockets of, you know, opportunities where you're able to bring that forward.
Yeah, I agree. And what are your thoughts on like scheduling sex? Like if that's are you pro it? Do you think it's like there's a different way to approach it?
I'm pro it. I think that there are different ways that you can do it. You can either do the literal version of putting it on the agenda and you have a time, but I wouldn't say it as like you need to show up, you know, and be in the mood. I think an easier way for you to go about it is to book that time for intimacy, for you to explore that time together. Maybe you're going to give each other a massage. Maybe you're going to do something that you really enjoy, like go to a spa. I think the act of saying like, this is the time that we're going to do it can be a lot of pressure for some couples, and that could be a big turnoff. So I would just recommend like booking instead a time for intimacy and exploring that together. There's so many different accessories that you can incorporate. And I think the good part about scheduling a time is that you can actually plan ahead to try new things. Because when you do it spontaneously, the chances of you, whipping out the handcuffs or, something different that you want to explore are really low. So I would see it through the glass half full, because I think a lot of people feel like when you're scheduling it, it can feel really stale, but it's an opportunity for you to try new things.
I love that. It's kind of like creating a container for exploration, right? So it's like, this is a time where we get, and the spontaneity of it all comes in from, we may have sex, we may not, we may learn a new skill, we may be picking up a new toy, we may be exploring a new kink. Who knows what's going to happen during this container, but it is setting a container for pleasure to flow in whatever way it wants to in the moment, right?
Yes. Yeah. And the other aspect is you might not book it on the agenda, but you can talk to each other early on in the day. Maybe you'll text each other and be like, hey, are you in the mood? Do you want to do it later on? Like, I think a spicy text and kind of getting a feel for where you're both at is also a great way to build anticipation.
And also, like, where are we at with photos? Is that still a thing? Do like people send each other?
I send them. Yeah, I do.
I love that. That's amazing. I was like considering doing like a boudoir like shoot, because I've never done one, and I've never like, I don't know, it's been a while since I felt sexy, and I'm just like, I think it would be like a nice little present.
Yeah. I mean, whatever. I haven't done a boudoir shoot, but like, it's just when we're big on lingerie. He loves it and gifts me a lot of it. So, it's like, I'll put one on before getting ready. And then I'll, if he's not at home, like I'll send him a photo of it. And it's just just like a sweet way of, connecting.
It's the effort, right? Like, I think it's like we do show effort to each other in such different ways. And I think men are definitely more visual, and I think like, I don't know about you, but for me, I'm very much more like feely. Like, it could be like the Scorpio in me, like, I want to know your heart, I want to know your soul, I want to know, like, and when he gets like deep with his emotions, I'm like so excited to hear about what's going on deep inside.
No, I like both, but they actually did do a study, because we've also been conditioned as women to think that like men are a lot more visual than we are. And they've done a study that's shown that like we're actually equally as visual. We've just been conditioned to think that men are more.
That's fascinating. I gotta explore that more then, I guess. Like, put him in some sexy outfit.
I'm very visual, actually.
Wow, interesting.
I mean, I love the feels, but I'm more visual too. Yeah.
Wait, so like, what are some things that he does for you visually?
I mean, it's not that he wears anything specific. I really enjoy it, actually. Like, the turn-ons are when he wears a suit. I've loved men in suits ever since I'm like super young. So he dresses really well to work. I enjoy that. But especially like on weekends when he's dressed more casually, but it's just for me, it's fashion that really, or when he's working out, I just really admire his body. So these are moments that I really enjoy. Sometimes it's just staring at him and I'm like, God, you're so good looking, So
I love that. And how long have you guys been together?
4 years.
Wow. Yeah. And were you guys like living together? I know you just got married.
Yeah, because we met during COVID. So it's so it's like, it's just, we've been living together I was already basically sleeping over at his house since the beginning. And so we've basically been in like an intense relationship since the get-go. Yeah. And then we just got married in September. But already felt married too,
Of course. Did you feel any different after being married?
Yes, I think it makes things a lot more serious.
In what way?
Like you have a lot more on the line, I think. Like, of course, when you're living together, there's already it's already very serious. Like, but I think that
There's a
when you
lot that
get
you combine already when like you're living together.
yeah, like,
Yeah.
like shit got real, I think is like, you don't just like casually divorce, but you can casually separate and like leave the apartment,
Yeah. And you don't need to get the
So,
government involved and your all the bank accounts and finances and lawyers and everything.
yeah, I think it's just for me, I really enjoy it. Like I'm a big pro get married
Yeah.
person.
Same. And I actually want to talk about that. Like, why? I don't know if you've noticed, there's like research coming out about like a lot of younger people saying that they don't want to get married. So, why do you think people are like becoming more anti-marriage or just like not for it?
I would say two things. One is optionality. So
Mm,
with, technology, people just have greater access to meeting more people. And you see that a lot in New York as well. But I think this just honestly speaks for almost anywhere is you may meet someone that you like, but you always think that you might meet someone better around the corner. So
can we talk about
op-
that? Like, why do
yeah,
you?
I mean, but optionality is a problem in life in general, right? Like when you go to college and you have so many options of what you can possibly do. I mean, that's a blessing and it's a curse, right?
Yeah,
Because then you just have a really hard time choosing and everything is an opportunity. And the same applies for people. Like it's a blessing and a curse because you can
yeah.
really meet a much better person than say someone you were with in high school. I mean, there's nothing wrong if you're with a person that you're with from high school, but you know what I mean? Like it's
I
just
get it.
it's
There's
but
always there's no matter what I think. Like if you look, you'll be able to find someone who on paper or whatever may look
yeah,
like a better option.
exactly. But I do think that at some point you just need to understand like, are you unclear of what you want?
Mm,
Are the people, and I think there's also a patience like factor with it. Um, where sometimes you go through a problem and it's been 1 year and you're like, all right, because divorce is so easy, I mean, compared to what it
right.
was
Yeah.
decades ago, like I think it can also be a bit banal of like how easily that you can divorce. So I think optionality is one factor. The other factor is women just have higher standards, and I think that's great.
Yeah.
And I think men and I'm speaking very broadly here, but like haven't been able to level up to where women are at. Like I just read recently that women own more homes today than single women own more homes today than single men, right? Like that's incredible.
That is
And
incredible. But I do see how that can be really intimidating for men at the same time, right? Where it's like
oh yeah.
I think I read something recently where men were like, well, what is our purpose now? Because I think the reason they're struggling so much with that leveling up is because they don't know what like masculine energy or masculinity is for anymore if they don't need to provide or protect women. So I think like if we can start talking more about like what is the purpose of relationships in general, of course. Like I know like with women, we understand that we can still offer so much of our sexuality and so much of our sensuality and our pleasure and our joy and our like, way of life. But like, and I wish men knew that they can do that too. And that's more than enough for us too. But I guess I think a lot of men are just like, oh, what do you need us for?
Yeah, I Liz Plank is a really great journalist that covers this extensively. I think men just haven't been like their upbringing has not kept up with the times. So
Mm,
we're still raising boys to the older standards and the standards of masculinity that are just really outdated. And we're having
yeah.
a really hard time helping them connect with their emotions and their vulnerability and all of that. And so this has obviously created a disconnect with how women are now brought up and educated and achieving the successes that they've always wanted to do. Also, marriage for so many years was an economic agreement, and
Yeah.
now that we don't need that, right? Like
I mean,
there's
for the
something
first
that's
time in
very
a really
free.
long time, it's for love. And then
Yeah,
that gets complicated and confusing because love is so unknown and like not something you can like put in a box and explain.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's relatively new, right? Because for thousands of years it was an economic agreement, and then it really became about love, truly at the turn of the 19th, of the 18th, of the 20th century. So
Yeah.
it's so recent.
So, how can we love our men better and make them feel more secure in the way that they show up in relationships?
I think it's providing a space for them to be vulnerable and letting them know that you are here for them and that you support them opening up about their feelings and sharing what it is that they're going through. And I think that's the best thing that we can do is like offering this non-judgmental space.
Yeah. How would that look like? Like, so that we don't fall into the trap of like the smothering or the coaching or the healer. Like, how do we make sure that we are staying as a like supportive partner, not falling into like, oh, let me nurture you and take care of you and heal your wounded little inner child?
Yeah, I mean, this shouldn't fall on a partner's,
Right.
back. Like I think shoulders. I think definitely recommend therapy for sure, and
Yeah.
normalize that if you have the financial conditions to do it. If you don't, I think journaling can be a really great resource. But just in general, sitting down with your partner on a daily basis and asking them not only how their day went, but like how do they feel about that, and how can you support them, and you know over time, just a lot of it takes some repetition for you to just reassure your partner that you want to hear about their feelings and you want to support them.
Mm-hmm.
And that this is like a partnership, really is about, it's a two-way street, and this should be an open line of communication. So I've come across many couples who just don't really talk about things. And I think maybe my partner and I over communicate, but it really is about being a little bit more stubborn and persistent. Like,
How
let's sit
so?
down and,
Yeah.
well, again, because like having one or two conversations is not going to change an entire life's worth of conditioning. And so
Right.
it is about building that habit of talking and opening up and making sure that your partner feels, welcome to share what's really going through. And then if it becomes a situation where like, the person clearly needs help, it can feel maybe overbearing for one partner, like seek the help of professionals
Yeah.
to help them navigate that. But that's, you want your partner to be a better person, so it makes sense for you to actively support them and let them know that you're there for them.
Yeah. Have you ever encountered a situation where, one partner may just be completely like closed off and is just like, and the other person is like, more on like a growth journey or personal development journey? And, how can we welcome the closed off person to like open up a little bit more without, being pushy, without being aggressive, without like nagging?
Yeah, think it's absolutely normal. If you're going to be with someone in the long run, you're not all both going to be on the same wavelength.
Right.
So it's very normal for you to experience these disconnects in certain moments of your relationship. But I keep coming back to the communication aspect, is
Yeah.
just making sure that you reassure them that, that your door is open, and maybe offering some different experiences that you can do together, like whether it's a
Hmm.
course. For example, I'm doing a course right now that's on building out your 10-year vision, and I'm doing it on my own, but my partner is doing it parallel because I thought it was super interesting and realized that like I can't build out my 10-year vision without him thinking
Yeah.
about his 10-year vision. So, and it's been really interesting for him because he's like, oh, I've never sat down to think about life this way. And it's not just 10-year vision, but it's like how you break that down into 5-year and annual goals, and like create the actual like operating systems for you to
Hmm.
execute these. And I think these experiences just help open up your partner's mind so much. And so it's really trying to find these pockets of growth that you can
Yeah.
do together is something
I
that can
love that.
really help.
Yeah. Like inviting them in like a way that's like, hey, I'm doing this. If you want,
Yeah,
it could be fun to do it together.
exactly. And
Cool.
and you learn so much from each other along the way. So
Yeah, amazing. I actually have a little bit of a pivot. So, have you found any research or in your personal experience a connection between pleasure and creativity for women?
I don't think I've found any research, but Esther Perel talks a lot about this
Mm,
with the component of eroticism. Sex is adult play, and we take it so seriously. And it really should be an opportunity for us to explore and not take ourselves seriously and try different things that we may like, that we're curious about. And if we don't like it, that's okay. But also through these pockets of eroticism on a daily basis, which are the moments of happiness, like this helps to cultivate more pleasure in your life when you're finding pleasure in the cup of coffee or pursuing your painting class or writing,
yeah,
whatever it is that fuels your creativity, you are more open to pleasure in general, and that translates into bed. So,
that
um,
makes sense.
yeah.
Because it's like activating your senses, right? Like, I think the more we lean into our pleasure, we're becoming more hyper aware of all of our senses. And then I think that allows you to create that experience of experiencing your senses fully in everything that you do, right? Not just the sex or intimacy, but also in like you said, enjoying the morning cup of coffee and just being more present and
Yes.
consciously aware of like I think it can like really help us with healing anxiety and depression too, right? Like bringing us back to like that center and that present
Yeah,
moment.
exactly. It's construed as something that may be very woo-woo
Mm,
or unrealistic to the life that we live today that's so interconnected. But the truth is that we like one of the best things that you can do for your health is to learn how to be more mindful and more present.
I mean, I don't know if it's that woo anymore. Like I think that there's someone, I forget who it was, said that astrology isn't for the millionaires, it's for the billionaires. And I think it's just kind of like interesting to see that like spirituality is also becoming way more mainstream right now. Like my podcast is all about like woo woo, like crazy. Like we go deep into all of that. But I think that like mental health and spirituality and just human psychology, we need to start having those conversations in the same room. I do believe that they're so interconnected. What's your like do you have a spiritual practice at all?
I don't know if I'd call it spiritual, but I journal every morning and I
Right.
meditate about 20 to 25 minutes. So
Yeah.
that's helped me become a lot more in tune. And I also exercise on almost a daily basis. Like, even if I am not feeling
Mhm.
motivated, I go for a walk. And just that
Yeah.
walk really helps to clear my mind. I've just become a lot more aware of the moments where I feel like the screen is tiring me out so much that I
Yeah.
truly need a break from it. And also noticing when I'm feeling really disconnected from my partner because I'm working too much or I'm too stressed, but also communicating that with my partner so that one thing that he always does is like, well, how can I help you? How can I support you? And he'll find like really small ways to brighten up my day. So for example, I was rushing to launch a new website this week, and I was so stressed out with that he brought me a box of chocolates at the end of the day, right? And it's like such a small act that makes
Yeah.
such a big difference, right? And this is
Mhm.
what I mean about like cultivating um, the eroticism with your partner on a daily basis. Like these, you thinking about your partner and these small acts really
It
make
goes
a big
such a
impact.
long way. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree 100%. We just moved into this place. My sink in the bathroom, the faucet is like too close to the edge or whatever. And then yesterday I came home and there's like a whole like extension on it and like a way to like make it a normal usable sink. And I was just like, that's so insanely like
Yeah.
considerate. I probably mentioned it like once or twice how annoying it is, and then I just show up and
You
it's like
thought about
fixed.
it. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, no, these are the things I think like go such a long way when it comes to wanting to be more intimate and more connected and show up more and feel like you're so loved and you're so taken care of, right?
Yes. Yeah.
What are some best practices that you and your husband do to like keep pleasure and intimacy alive outside of the bedroom?
So it's the surprise date nights for
Yeah,
sure. And just, we don't have kids. So it
yeah,
helps that we have, I'd say, 2 date nights per week.
yeah.
Every day we dedicate at least 30 minutes to sitting down together and talking about our day, but also just talking about new things that we've learned and spending that time to also physically touch and
That's
just seek
awesome.
these new experiences. I think it's really important.
Hmm.
Whether it is the 10-year vision course that I'm doing or anything else that can be a trip that we're planning. But I think it's really important for you to bring in that novelty and element of surprise.
Yeah, beautiful. And what is this course that you're working on or any other projects that you like to share?
Yeah, we're going to be launching a sexual desire course in a few weeks.
It looks
And
so
it's,
juicy. I'm so excited.
yeah, thank you. It's the number one question that I get, whether it is you feel like you have low libido, what's wrong with you, or you're frustrated that your partner has low libido and you are trying to find a solution. I think the basis is that we don't understand how sexual desire works. And so we think that it occurs on a whim, it's spontaneous, and that's not true. We can actually learn how to turn on the ons and turn off the offs, but you need to understand how that works. So I'm creating a 1 hour mini course where you're going to leave with like very practical knowledge of how you can apply that to your life and understand your desire better, consequently your partner's desire if you have a partner. But I think it's just a great way for you to understand how it works in general, for it to create more empathy and you be able to work with yourself and with a sexual partner on it. So I'm really excited for that to come out.
That sounds amazing. I'm definitely gonna buy that because I think it's exactly what I like want. There's not a lot of people out here that are talking about like sexual intimacy in the way that you are, which is what I think is so fascinating by the work that you do. It's just it goes so much more deeper into like the psychology of it all as well.
Mm,
So I think we need I'm so grateful that you do what you do.
thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think it really boils down to, of course, the physical is an important part of it. But I think before
Hmm.
we hop into the physical, it's the psychological because
Yeah.
your largest sex organ is your brain.
Mm.
And we need to learn how to cultivate that, understand ourselves better, and really foment our imagination.
Yeah, wow. I love that. That's amazing. And you also are doing events in New York, right?
Yeah, I partnered with Soho House and a
Amazing.
friend of mine, Addis Fouché. And so we're doing a series of events throughout the year at Soho House, New York, on sexual wellness. And our first one's going to be next Thursday on BDSM. I'm really excited. We have a panel with two pro dominatrixes and
Oh,
a
wow.
submissive. So it should be really, really interesting. It's admittedly a world I know very little of. So it's going to be a lesson for me as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I love about this podcast. I get to bring on people that are experts in their field and learn so much. So it's really selfish of me to be doing this podcast too.
Yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit about Wonderlust?
Yeah, so Wonderlust is like the vehicle through which I started my journey in sexual wellness. It's my company. We have an intimacy card deck to help couples talk about sex and spice things up. And we're going to be launching the sexual desire course soon. And the goal is to really build a library of educational tools for you to build the sex life and relationship that you want. So I
I
think that
love
you
that.
really can, have your cake and eat it too. I really, really believe that.
I say that all the time. I'm like, it's my cake. Why wouldn't I eat it too?
Yeah. Exactly.
Amazing. Natasha, thank you so much. This has been such an enlightening conversation, and I can't wait for people to hear it. Do you have any piece of advice? Last words. The floor is yours.
I think people just need to be aware that they're not broken. A lot of sexual frustrations that we have just stem from a lack of education and lack of self understanding as a consequence of that. And it's not necessarily anyone's fault, but it's just how we were brought up. And that's something that Dr. Emily Nagoski talks a lot about. And it really transformed my understanding of sexual wellness. So just understand that whatever you're going through, you're not broken. And we fluctuate throughout our lives. It really is equipping yourself with the right education so that you can get to where you want to get to. And also, I know we talk so much about sex, but like if you're just really not interested and it's not your jam, that's totally okay too, right? Like you shouldn't
Yeah.
feel like you need to have high sexual desire to fit in
Or
or
to be loved, right?
yeah.
Yeah. I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you so, so much for being here on the show today.
Thank you. This was amazing. And I hope that, everybody listening has found it useful.